Welcome, everyone. I am delighted to be here today with you all, and been looking forward to this. And my hope is that each of you in attendance and watching the video later on can take away something useful or meaningful to you into your daily lives. So I work as an integrative psychotherapist at Sutter Health's Institute for Health and Healing. I work alongside a team of functional medicine practitioners, acupuncturists, health coaches, and we work to provide mind, body, spirit services that empower people to heal. And we'll touch upon IHH a bit more towards the end of our talk today. I also function as a peer-reviewed trainer on acceptance and commitment therapy for the Association of Contextual Behavioral Science. I'm also a father of 2 sons, a husband, and a former recovering musician. So these are our 3 learning objectives for today: to apply values-based living principles. So we're going to get inside what values are and how we might apply them to our daily lives. And one of the ways of doing this is going to be through connecting with our heart's deepest desires for how we want to be as a human being, how we want to live and behave as a human being. And we'll do this through a reflective exercise called the sweet spot in a little bit. And then finally, to commit to a meaningful direction in the year ahead. And we're going to be looking at that through a symbolic reference called the bullseye, as a means of looking at 4 domains in our life and kind of charting a course and in the year ahead as to what's most important to us in a particular domain. So this past year or 2 has undoubtedly been very challenging on multiple levels for us as a species, as a planet, as a nation, as family members, friends, as colleagues, co-workers. All of us have been impacted one way or another by the pandemic. And whether that's been through personal illness or the loss of a loved one, or the many and various socioeconomic and political manifestations of the pandemic. And it can be very tempting to repeatedly retreat in the face of those circumstances. And put simply, when I say retreat, that could look like hiding under the covers or retreating into our favorite Netflix series or binging on our favorite ice cream or cookies, right? So, and while that in very small doses, might be actually good for us, we can also, if we can take the time to contact the hard parts. And what I mean by that is the uncomfortable feelings that tend to arise in the face of difficult circumstances. And I know for me, this past year or so, it's been fear and anxiety, along with other feelings. And if we can make contact with that for even just brief moments at a time, we might also uncover what most deeply matters to us, because we hurt where we care and we care where we hurt. Right? So in other words, we don't know how precious a sunny and clear air day is when we haven't experienced clouds or smoke-filled air. Or it's another way of putting that, it's the the depths of the grief that we experience when we lose someone, that helps us realize just how much they meant to us. Or if you've ever noticed how if you have, or when, not if, but when you have interpersonal conflicts, how it hurts that much more when in the conflict is someone close to you, someone you care about, because they're two sides of the same coin, the hurt and the care. Or another way of saying that is our values and our vulnerabilities are poured from the same vessel. In the words of Rachel Naomi Raymond, author of My Grandfather's Blessings, there is often more wisdom to be found at the edges of life than in its middle. Life-threatening illness may shuffle our values like a deck of cards. Sometimes a card that has been on the bottom of the deck for most of our lives turns out to be the top card, the thing that really matters to us. Having watched people sort their cards and play their hands in the presence of death and life-changing events for many years, I would say that rarely is the top card perfection or possessions or even pride. Most often the top card is love. And those times where I've been lucky enough to recognize that my own fears or anxieties or sadness is reflective of what I hold dear, including my loved ones, and been able to pivot towards love, whether that's through hugging my son or expressing what my wife means to me, or just sharing something important with someone I care about. Then those are times when we can enrich our lives, even in the midst of difficult circumstances. So this approach of being willing to be present to our vulnerabilities for moments at a time, being willing to acknowledge and accept them as they are, while pivoting towards our values, comes out of the psychotherapy and training approach called ACT, or acceptance and commitment therapy. This is a mindfulness-based, values-directed form of therapy and training, where the aim is to enhance psychological flexibility, or our ability to be open, so openly allowing thoughts and feelings to come and go without a struggle, while also recognizing that some thoughts are helpful and some thoughts not so helpful, aware of ourselves in the here and now as a conscious human being, and engaged in what matters, engaged in actions aligned with our values. This approach is designed to help individuals and communities live meaningful and fulfilling lives while effectively handling challenges, the inevitable challenges along the way. ACT is evidence-based. We have well over 800 randomized controlled trials, and by the end of this year, we'll be close to 1,000. And they span across a wide array of various human conditions, everything from fibromyalgia and epilepsy to marital relations, stroke, quality of life, burnout, eating disorders, diabetes, helping people to cope with such health challenges and to live more fulfilling lives. Or simply put, ACT is about accepting thoughts and feelings as they are, as passing experiences that sometimes have useful data, while other times, once again, some thoughts might not be so helpful. Choosing a valued life direction, a direction we want to head in a particular moment, and to take action in that direction. Like even at the end of this webinar, I would invite you to think about if you were going to take one small step in a meaningful direction, whether you're caring for yourself or doing something you enjoy or that's important to you, what might that small step be? Even if you have to attend to life obligations, circumstances, can you do that in a way where you are infusing your values, the qualities that you most want to bring into your life? And that's what we're going to explore now. Values are about connecting with what matters. They can provide direction like a compass in terms of how we want to orient ourselves in lives and what we want to be moving towards. More specifically, they are our heart's deepest desires for how we want to live and behave as a human being. And one way of looking at this is how we want to treat ourselves and others. Right? How do you want to treat, if you were being your best you, your ideal you, how would you be treating your partner, your family member, your colleague, your boss? Right? If you were being the person you most want to be, how would you be treating them? How would you be treating yourself? Perhaps with some patience or compassion. These are qualities we want to inform our actions, and they can provide sources of meaning and motivation. Meaning in that when we infuse our actions with values, we add more meaning and fulfillment. They're not just remote actions anymore. They're important. They add fulfillment to our lives, and they can provide the motivation to start or to sustain behavioral changes. So one of the ways of doing this is by kind of constructing a house of values. In other words, to begin contemplating who we want to be, what matters to us, in what ways am I already living according to my values, and in what ways am I not? Values are not skills or strengths necessarily. They can become skills or strengths, but not always. They're often aspirational. They're what we want to be moving towards and being more of in our lives. But the cool thing about values is that they are readily accessible. They're accessible to us in any given moment. Unlike goals, which are in the there and then, what we want to accomplish or do in the future, values we have access to right now. Right now, we can be more compassionate to ourselves or another person. Right now, we can bring some humor into the next moment of our lives. Right now, we can be open to what we're experiencing, what we're feeling. Right now, we could take responsibility for our wellness or for our work duties. Right? We can be creative in some ways. So these are readily accessible. And then the commitment, or what's specifically called committed action, is the living that goes on inside that house, where the rubber meets the road. So I like to take you through a little exercise here where I'm going to be inviting you to reflect upon an event, a memory over the past year of your life. And then we're going to extract qualities from that memory, and I'll guide you through that practice. This is called the sweet spot exercise. And it was originally developed by Kelly Wilson, who's one of the founders of acceptance and commitment therapy. So if you can get comfortable wherever you are right now, find a comfortable posture. This will be approximately 5 minutes long. And I always encourage folks to take care of yourselves along the way. Do only what you're willing to do, but see if you can push the envelope a little bit too. Like if this is something you normally would shy away from, see if you're willing to kind of move into it, to give it a shot, step forward just a little bit. And I'll guide you through the experience. And if you're willing, you can gently close your eyes. or at least fix your gaze downward in front of you. And perhaps bring your attention to your breathing just for a moment, noticing the breath going in and out. And then I'll invite you to reflect upon this past year. Now, even though this past year has clearly manifested in some sour moments and events for many of us, it has also likely manifested some sweet moments. So even though your mind might naturally gravitate towards those sour moments on occasion, for the purpose of this exercise, I'm going to ask you to see if you can direct your attention to memories that captured some of life's sweetness for you. A memory that was enjoyable or meaningful in some way. It could be something as simple and as small as sipping on your favorite beverage while sitting outside in the sun. It could be something much more significant, like some trip or event that you participated in. And I'm going to ask you to zoom in on one particular memory for the next couple of minutes. And imagine that you are back in that experience, in those moments. And imagine you're there looking around and notice what you can see around you. Notice what you can hear. Notice what you're touching, if anything. Notice what your surroundings are and what you have physical contact with. And you may notice any particular sense or smells or taste, perhaps not. And notice if there's anyone else there in this memory. Notice if it's you on your own or if you're with anyone. And also notice what you are doing in this memory. So there's the environment, the context, and also notice what you are doing, what your role is in this experience. And finally, see if you can detect the qualities that you brought to that experience, that your actions were infused with, that helped to make that experience meaningful or enjoyable for you. Once again, what was it that you were bringing to the table? How were you being or behaving in that experience that helped to make it meaningful or enjoyable to you? And then I'm going to invite you to gradually broaden your attention, making a note of those qualities of how you were being at that time, but gradually broadening your attention to begin to notice you in the here and now again, perhaps reorienting to your breath. Slowly opening your eyes if they're not open already. And becoming aware of your immediate surroundings. And what I'm going to invite folks to do is to chat, use the chat function to, if you're willing, to share not necessarily what the memory was about, but rather the qualities that you brought to that experience. You know, how were you being or behaving in that experience that once again help to make it especially meaningful. So if you can see if you can make a note of that and put them in the chat box, and I'm going to take a look at these. So here's what I'm seeing: supportive, patient, so being patient and supportive, joyful, compassionate, loving, caring, curious, relaxed, playful, open, grateful, trusting, encouraging, advocating, connecting with nature, generous, honest, guiding, grateful, reflective. This is awesome. Peaceful, excited, secure, loving, uninhabited or uninhibited flow of love. Vulnerable. These are values. You guys are contacting values. And values are these qualities of being and doing. And when we can go back in time like this and extract from an actual event that was meaningful, then we know we're making contact with values, because the event itself was already meaningful. We're just pulling out the ingredients, right? And so we can take these same ingredients of being grateful, loving, relaxed, humorous, patient, supportive, and apply them into other situations in our lives, apply them into our next conversation with a colleague or client, apply them to the next time we are sitting at home and listening to music or making dinner, right? So that's what values are all about. This is how we can apply them as principles to live by. And so we're going to transition here, and we just did a little reflection, and now we're going to do some direction. So you'll notice a bullseye on the screen, and this bullseye has life divided up into 4 domains. Now, we could divide life up into 10 or 12 domains, but for simplicity purposes, we're dividing life here into 4 domains: into work, which can include, of course, our actual jobs or employment, but also chores or education and studies. Then we have health, and that can include anything we do for our mental, physical, or spiritual health. Love, and that can include any and all relationships with friends, colleagues, family, partner, children, parents, etc. And then play, and this would include leisure and recreation, anything we might do for enjoyment, activities, relaxation, etc. So first, I'm going to invite you to think about which of these domains are particularly important to you, and yet you haven't been giving it the kind of attention that you ideally would want to. once again, which of these domains are particularly important to you, and yet you haven't been giving it the kind of attention that you would really want to. So just think about that for a moment. And be aware of any shoulds. So our mind likes to generate shoulds, like I should be bringing more attention to this domain, right? Be on the lookout for shoulds, right? And you can thank our mind for trying to kind of keep us on track. But what I'm asking is, deep in your heart, like, you know, which of these are really important, and yet you haven't been giving it the kind of attention you would want. And so, and what we want to do is, if you think about the year ahead, right? And if you were to choose one of these domains, which of them would it be that you would like to bring more attention to? How you are living in that domain, how you are being in that domain, just like the qualities, the values you extracted from that last exercise. If you were to take any one of those values and apply it to a particular domain, which of those domains would you like to see yourself applying those values to? And another way of looking at this, if we were to fast forward to the end of next year, to the end of 2022, and we visit the you in the future you at the end of 2022, who was looking back on how they spent this past year, right? Looking back, how would the future you at the end of 2022 like to look back on how they lived their life in a particular domain? What would they like to be able to say? Like, I did this, or I brought more attention to that. And in particular, what is one action you would like to see yourself doing, that future you would like to look back and say, hey, I did this, right? Now, that could come in the form of a specific goal, but I'm talking more about kind of an ongoing habit or everyday action, a way of living. So to give you an example, I might say, in the domain of play, I want to be more spontaneous and fun with my children, right? So that would be an example. It's kind of like a mission statement, of how we want to be acting in a particular domain. Or I might say, in the domain of health, I want to be more caring and patient with my body. And I'd love to look back a year from now having been that way. So once again, using the chat feature, please chat the domain and what you would like to see yourself doing in that domain. Maybe wording it like a mission statement, like I just did, perhaps. I'll leave that up to you. So once again, you're picking a domain. Okay, my mission is to spend more fun times with friends. And then I see someone picking a domain of health. Someone else, love and expressing my love daily with my wife. These are beautiful. Being more loving and kind to myself. In health, I would like to be more disciplined and diligent. In health, give myself more forgiveness for healing. Notice how each of us yearns for different things, right? Or to give and receive care and concern, affection and regard. Or to improve my work habits to increase my productivity for the year. Awesome. That will probably win you points with your employer. To have better work-life balance, healthy boundaries, which helps me feel more in control. To let things go more, right? Notice once again, we yearn for different things, and that's okay. With values, there are no right or wrong values. They are freely chosen desired ways of being. My mission is to make healthy choices, to be healthy, to express love and accept things as they are. Awesome. So with that, these are some resources on ACT, on acceptance and commitment therapy, which is the overarching approach from which the values presentation today has been derived from. There are 3 value sorting exercises listed here with links that I believe will be in the chat box. There are 3 exercises you can do online to help clarify your own values. The first 2 are relatively brief, like 10, 15 minutes perhaps. The last one is much more comprehensive, and I would invest some time in that one. It's pretty awesome, and all 3 are free. The next resource is an online self-help program through Utah State University called the ACT Guide. It's been tested in over a dozen randomized controlled trials for stress, anxiety, depression, and pain. And it's a self-paced program over the course of 12 weeks, or 12 lessons, I should say. And I think there is a $10 administrative fee with that. And then there's the Happiness Trap, an 8-week online high quality program with Russ Harris. And there's of course a cost for that. And then there is an app called the ACT Coach, available for Android and Apple. And please note that these programs are not affiliated with nor endorsed by Sutter Health.
All right. Thank you so much, Lou. Wow, what a powerful presentation and such wonderful information that you provided all of us. We are going to jump into our question and answer period now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A box, and we will do our very best to get through as many questions as we have time for. All right, Lou. So for our first question of the day, how do I help my adolescent sons investigate and apply their own values?
Sure. I also have an adolescent son who just became an adolescent recently at 13 years old. And I think one of the probably simplest ways is when they are having interactions with friends, and especially when conflicts come up, to inquire about how they want to treat their friends, how they want to treat them. Because then you're getting into the qualities that they want to infuse in their actions. You can also ask them in a given situation or an activity they engage in, especially like a sport or extracurricular activity, or even gaming these days, what's important to them about that activity? What's important to them in that? Those are probably 2 of the more common ways that I might help my son to contact his own values. And then of course we could do perspective taking questions, kind of like we did today. With an adolescent, you don't want to go too far into the future, but you might say, like a month from now, how do you want to look back on how you handled the situation? Or how do you want to look back on how you spent your time, right? That might be another way. Thank you, Laura, for the question.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Our next question is, I'm at an age where I find myself dismissing my goals and desires because I feel it's just too late. how can I get over that?
Great question. Firstly, we want to recognize it's too late as a thought, right? As a thought that can have a lot of power and influence over our behaviors, but doesn't necessarily have to. Like, and this might be hard to imagine, but no matter how late in life we are, if we're sitting here, we're clearly not breathing our last breath. But if we were breathing our last breath, what would we want to have most influenced the choices that we've made? A thought of it's too late, or some deep desire in our heart, right? So what would we most want to have influenced the choices we made as we were breathing our last breath? That thought it's too late, or something else? But our mind does a great job at trying to come up with reasons to not engage in certain behaviors, especially when those choices, those goals involve some discomfort, involve something uncomfortable, whether it's physically, emotionally, or mentally uncomfortable. And even though in our sweet spot exercise, even though we were contacting an enjoyable moment, they're not always enjoyable. Values-based living can often be uncomfortable, but yet it can still be meaningful. Right? And so there's a difference there. So in other words, whatever goals or desires you have, can we allow these thoughts of it's too late, or any other number of reasons that the mind might generate, to come and go, and ask ourselves, what is it that I most really want to guide my decisions? And is this a goal that is really important to me, or is this a should goal, right? All right, thank you for that, Laura.
Great. Thank you so much for that information, Lou. So our next question is, so how do we motivate ourselves to do the things that we know would help us achieve our goals, but we seem to avoid them?
So a big part of the talk today was in recognizing that our goals, so our goals, once again, are there and then. They are things we want to accomplish in the future. Now, that future could be 5 minutes from now or 5 years from now. The actions or the steps we take along the way towards those goals can be infused with our values, with those desired qualities, and thus can provide some motivation when we can consciously connect values to action. So for example, the next work task that you do, and let's say you have a goal of accomplishing a certain number of tasks, or meeting a certain deadline, or hitting a certain budget, whatever, or productivity goal, whatever that might be. Firstly, we can ask, what is it about that goal in itself that might be meaningful to us? Rather than seeing it as something that's been imposed upon us, or something that we should do or have to do. What is meeting that goal connected with in the bigger picture that matters to us? And with regards to all the steps I will take or need to take in support of that goal, how can I infuse those steps with values, like being respectful in my communication, or being diligent in my efforts, or and of course, we will all go off course. We will all lapse into old habits or behaviors. And when that happens, rather than beating ourselves up, can we see what we can learn from that detour, right? Just like if we were to be driving down a road and detour into a way of living or being that is not aligned with our values, when we go off in that detour, we don't necessarily lose the gains that we had made up until then. Like, imagine you're going down a road and then you hit a detour, but then you come back on the road right where you left off. You already have those experiences to draw from. And now you can ask yourself, can I recommit to the path, right? So, so we will go off course, we will lapse, and can we recommit to the path that is important to us, infusing those actions with values and tying that goal to what really matters to us in the big picture. I hope that was helpful.
That was very helpful. Thank you so much, Lou. Lou, can you let us know again, what does ACT stand for?
Acceptance and commitment therapy. And thank you for pronouncing it as ACT. Our normal inclination is to pronounce it as ACT, like CBT or DBT, but it's pronounced ACT for a reason, because it is an active form of therapy and living.
Great. Thank you for letting us know. So, Lou, how do you ground yourself daily with your value you want to improve from the exercise that we just completed?
How do you ground yourself daily with the value you want to improve with okay, sure. That's a great question. Many ways of doing that potentially. We can start the day with an intention. Waking up, how is it that I want to be today? Or what is one small step that I can take that is readily accessible to me? And for those of you coming up with New Year's resolutions, same thing, very, very small steps that are accessible to me, meaning I can do this, I have the resources to do this, and connecting those steps with something that is already a part of our routine. So for example, if you make yourself a cup of coffee in the morning, you might, combine that cup of coffee with a step outside and breathing in some fresh air as a way of taking care of yourself. Or you may combine that cup of coffee with expressing to a loved one what they mean to you. Or you may combine that cup of coffee with simply being present, enjoying the taste, the smell as you drink it. In other words, we're rather than functioning on autopilot, we're grounding ourselves in our five senses and in our values through intention. So being intentional and kind of just to set a tone for the day, and with very small steps.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Lou. And thank you for answering all those questions. We have wrapped up our question and answer period, so I'd like to turn things back over to you now.
Okay. Great, thank you. Just very quickly to wrap things up, this is a little bit of information on Sutter Health's Institute for Health and Healing, otherwise known as IHH. We have several locations, as you can see on the slide. I'm located in the Sacramento office. There's the contact information there. But the best way really to get to know IHH a bit more is either through the website you see listed, myhealthandhealing.org. We also have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page that you can participate in. We provide various services, individual services. We have groups and classes that are available for people who are interested in an integrative medicine approach to their health and wellness. It's not just about symptom management, but also addressing root causes that underlie our various health issues. And once again, that's with functional medicine practitioners, acupuncturists, psychotherapy, nutritionists, health coaches, and depending upon the location, could include chiropractor, massage, and other services.